Okie dokie, let's do this. Hey guys, it's Harley. Today we're going to be talking about indoor houseplant lighting and kind of how I categorize indoor lighting, how to find the perfect lighting for your houseplants. Natural indoor lighting is definitely the way to go if you possibly can. I will definitely forget some information. If you have any other tips and tricks, information, input, feedback, leave it in the comments down below. I would say that lighting and watering are the two downfalls of beginner plant parents, so it is really easy to fall into the trap of plants need no light. That's not possible. I don't know any plants that we keep indoors that need absolutely zero light, but hey, I know in the beginning I was like, oh, this plant is going to survive in my bathroom with absolutely no light and barely any artificial light. That's just not the case, you know? Getting to know the general lighting requirements of different categories and kinds of plants is really, really important, especially in the beginning. I know it seems really overwhelming, but I promise it's actually a lot easier than it seems. There are factors that play into lighting. The biggest factor that can vary lighting between like my house and your house is the altitude in which you live. So just keep in mind that I live at about, it's like 42 or 4,500 feet above sea level. I can't remember which one it is. The higher in altitude you are, the less atmosphere there is to block the sun. The light exposure I get in my home is going to probably be a little bit more potent lighting than those of you that live at sea level. So if you live at a lower altitude, then just kind of take what I say and then add a little bit of footage. We'll get into that later. Brighten up the lighting a little bit for your plants if you live at a lower altitude. Did that make sense? First things first, let's talk about different directions of windows. So we're going to go north, east, south, and west. North is pretty much just considered low light. That is the lowest light I would ever give a plant. My plants that I keep in northern windows are ZZ plants, sansevierias, cast iron plants, things like that. Those plants that like lower light. Again, north windows are the absolute least light I will give a plant, and I'll only ever keep plants directly in front of those northern exposed windows. Eastern windows are one of my favorite windows to keep plants. Morning direct sunlight is awesome for plants. It's not as strong as evening sunlight, so the chances of your plant's leaves getting burnt are a lot less likely. I would definitely categorize eastern windows as medium, bright, indirect light. The closer up to the window you keep the plants, the more potent. I keep saying potent. Is there a different word I could be using? Probably. The closer to the window you keep your plant, the more strong. We're just gonna say potent. The light is there, and then as you move them farther back, the less potent the light is. So maybe up against the window, it's considered medium to bright indirect. This is about 6 feet back from the window, these plants right here, and I would consider these in lower light, although they do have a southern window here. But ignoring that southern window, if they were just getting the eastern light, I would consider it low light. About 6 feet back is as far away from just an eastern window that I would keep plants. I would recommend only keeping low light options 6 feet back. Eastern windows are prime in my opinion. The plants I keep closest to an eastern exposed window are peace lilies. I keep Hoya. Hoya really love eastern windows. That seems to be like a perfect spot for them. They're getting super bright light, but it's not too strong to burn their leaves. An angel hair vine. I have my string of hearts there, a donkey's tail there, my 2 cissus plants, so Cissus rotundifolia and Cissus rhombifolia. Those are some plants I would recommend keeping there. Next up are southern exposed windows, which is what I am facing right now. It's a little bit dark and dreary outside. It's been raining all week here, so that's why it doesn't look too bright. Get quite a bit of light through my southern windows. I do have 2 large southern exposed windows in my house. South windows are so great, and it is where I keep the bulk of my plants facing. So the room we're in now does have eastern facing window and a southern window, so just kind of keep that in mind, the different directions of windows. Of course, the more direction of windows your plants have in one given room equals more light it gets throughout the day. Overall, I would consider south windows the strongest indoor lighting your plant can have overall. So if you can have your pick of one direction facing window, definitely go with south. The afternoon sunlight they are getting through southern windows is super strong, so that is something you need to be aware of. Just because a plant likes bright light doesn't mean it's going to be okay with the direct light it gets majority of the day through a southern window. So you kind of have to gauge what type of foliage your plant has. As an example, here's a lipstick plant. I did keep it right up next to my southern window to begin with, with, and I did get some discoloration. So I moved it about 3 feet back from the southern window, and now it's getting that super bright light almost all day without any of the super direct sun rays. I'm running out of breath. On that note of like direct light, the glass on all of your windows can magnify the light into your house, kind of like how you can like shine a magnifier onto something with the sun and start a fire. It's like kind of the same thing, not exactly the same thing, but that kind of general idea. So just be wary about keeping anything too close up against the window. In my house, I keep my succulents and cacti up against my southern exposed windows. Here I have a, what are you? A Ripsalis plant. Oh, I also keep my lipstick plants almost right up against the window. Ficus really like a lot of direct sunlight if possible. Yeah, that's all I keep right up against my southern window. If you keep a plant in front of your southern window, automatically, if you move your plant off to the side of that window, like in my mind, I don't know if this is true, but I automatically count it as 1 level less of light exposure. So as an example, I have my south window here. If I have a plant off to the side, which I do have this little aloe, I no longer would consider it getting high direct sunlight during the day. It would be bright indirect light. Automatically, if it's off to the side, it's getting no direct light. So in my other room, I do have a south window. I keep a whole bunch of plants probably 5 feet off to the side of the southern window. Plants I keep there are my large peace lily. I keep a bunch of calathea, Hoya. I have a whole bunch of plants there actually. Pothos, philodendron, and they really like it because it is bright light, but it's super filtered bright light. So they're not getting any direct rays, but they are still getting sun exposure they need. Facing directly back from that south window in there, I have 2 different lipstick plant varieties. I have my variegated monstera. I have a Monstera adansonii, and then a few alocasia that are about 4 feet back from that southern window, and I consider those to be getting bright indirect light, and they really like it there. And then the next level back from those, I keep my big white IKEA shelf. I have a whole bunch of plants there. You really can't go wrong. Those are about 6 feet back from that south exposed window, and I do also consider that bright indirect light. They do really well there. Then the last direction, of course, is west facing windows. These windows, you need to be very wary about what you put in front of them. That evening sunlight is really strong. I personally have a tree in front of this window, so I don't have to worry too much about them being scorched, and I did also put some sheer white curtains in front of the windows to help protect my plants from getting too direct of sunlight through that direction, because seriously, learn from my mistake. Putting the wrong plants there can really be detrimental to the foliage. It can burn it right to a crisp. I don't know what it is about the evening sunlight that's just so strong. I'm sure there's something scientific behind it, but be careful. I would consider this direction bright light exposure. So depending on if you have the curtain or not, right now with the curtain in front of my window, I consider mine low to medium bright indirect light. Without the curtain, I'd consider it like medium direct light because it's not getting too direct light of all day. The plants I keep right up next to the window are the ones with the tougher foliage. So Ficus, Hoya, I have some philodendrons there. I actually don't have too many different varieties of plants in front of these windows because again, it is a really strong lighting. My favorite place to keep plants is actually facing eastern exposed windows, pulled about 5 feet back, 4 to 5 feet back. I would consider that 4 to 5 feet back to be low bright indirect light, which with the exception of the northern exposed windows is the least amount of light my plants will get throughout the day. So the plants that I keep there are my more lower light tolerating plants. So Calathea, Stromanth, I have philodendron, I have some begonia sitting kind of there as well, but they also get some southern exposure because they're on top of a shelf, which they get it from both directions, so it isn't quite as low light as the Calatheas, which are only getting that eastern light. I also have a Sansevieria there. Wow, mostly Marantas. Favorite spot to keep arrowhead plants because it is lower light, but it's still bright enough that the plant will thrive and it's not going to bleach the leaves. Great spot for calatheas, great spot for arrowheads. It's so hard to show light exposure, you know, like there's no real way to show it through a camera. So I hope that my words and the footage I've included kind of help give a basic guideline as to what each facing window and how far back from each window means lighting wise for a plant. Again, it kind of varies a little bit. So with all of that being said, here is kind of the system I follow if I'm not sure what lighting to start out giving a plant. So I kind of err on the side of caution in that I give them a little bit brighter light, the place I like to bring new plants into is that shelf that's 4 to 6, I can't remember how many feet back, but that white IKEA shelf, I really like to keep new plants there. That seems to be kind of a happy in between super bright light, but then also it's pulled far enough back that it's getting no direct light. And as I keep my plants there, I kind of gauge their growth. Things I'll watch for on new plants as they're sitting there getting new growth is I'll watch for yellowing leaves, bleached leaves, discoloration. So let's say I have like a pink arrowhead plant there. If I notice the pink is starting to fade, that's a sign that it's not getting enough light. I'll also watch for burning of the leaves, so little crispy edges, discolorations like my lipstick plant here, and then I'll kind of move them according to the symptoms they're showing me as they get new growth. That seems to be a really happy in between. Something else to consider about light is a lot of plants can tolerate different levels of light. Quick side note on that is although a plant can tolerate lower or higher light, that doesn't necessarily mean it's happy. Even though it can tolerate that lower light, that may mean that the plant is just dying more slowly than another plant that can't tolerate it as much. The big thing that has to change as you give your plants more light versus less light is the amount of water they're going to need. So if you've been keeping a plant in medium bright and direct light, say you've been keeping a calathea in medium bright and direct light, if you decide you want to move it back to low light, which it can tolerate, you're probably going to have to water it less than when it was in that medium bright light. On the flip side, if you have a calathea in low light and you've been watering it like once a week or once every 2 weeks, once you move them into a higher light level, then you're probably going to have to water it more frequently. So that's just something to consider as far as the lighting goes as well. Now I know why not too many people have talked about lighting indoors because it's just kind of hard and super vague. I can only say so much with my words without actually showing you, but I really can't show you the light intensity, I know there is something you can do. It has to do with the intensity of a shadow. Oh yeah, that's what it is. So I don't know exactly how to classify the different shadows on an object. The more intense a shadow, if you hold an object in front of a window, the brighter that light intensity is. And then of course, the more faded and dissolved the shadow is, I don't know if that's the right word, the less contrasted, that's the word, the less contrasted the shadow is, then the less intense the light. And then of course, once there's a point where there's no shadow, that is not enough light to keep a plant. I've also heard people say that if it's a spot where you couldn't read a book, then it's too low of light for a plant. Is that the thing? I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different little sayings like that about plants and lighting and reading books and living in the dark. I don't know, something like that. So if you know what those little things are, please let me know down below. I'd really appreciate it because my words are jumbled and I don't know if this video made any sense at all. So if it made sense, please let me know in the comments. If it didn't, please also let me know in the comments. I really appreciate your honest feedback. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye!